You're listening or watching Following On with myself, John Norman, Jared Kimber and Steve Harmison. We've spoken about Jofra Archer on the show so far this week. Now I want to talk about the ICC. Usman Samiuddin in Cricinfo, Mike Atherton in The Times, Jared Kimber numerous times on his own YouTube channel.
Good areas.
Good areas.
Don't plug them and not plug me.
Well, I know that you're going to plug yourself. So the World Cricketers Association have come out and essentially said what we have been saying for a long, long time, that the game has no leadership on an international level, and we know that. How many times do you have to read an article about the ICC where it's described as essentially an events management company? I mean, that's
what it is.
That's what it is. That's how it's. I don't even know.
It's supposed to be
and,
as well.
And to be honest with you, it's the essentially bit that I am now, pulling up. We all know that.
Yeah.
Right. That is where we're at. You only have to go back to the situation involving Afghanistan and the calls from government, at government level in at least two different countries, coming very shortly after Australia had basically decided not to play them in bilaterals. This is the question of whether Afghanistan should play international cricket is a subject that we should hear the ICC give their take on.
I'll go further. When they brought Afghanistan in, and Afghanistan had to have a women's team, and Afghanistan said, we have a women's team, and it was a training squad, right? And everyone was like, okay, we could see them training or whatever. And then the Taliban came in, and of course the training squad all left the country, and they all live in Queensland and New South Wales now, wherever they've gone to. And so we said, okay, well, you said that Afghanistan could only have them get their status and their money if they had a women's side. They no longer have a women's side. So the easy decision as an organisation at that stage is to say, well, half the money is going to this independent team that has now fled the country, and the other half can go to the men. But there is no one who runs the game who is willing to do that.
And we spoke about this, didn't we, with Bumble, David Lloyd, 6 months ago. And we put all these ideas forward. You've written about it in the last 24 hours or so. Essentially, nobody runs world cricket, correct?
Yeah.
I think one of the stipulants within ICC governance is that no country should be allowed to have any links to the government.
Yeah, no government interference.
No government interference, which is an absolute joke.
Well, this one is Sri Lanka, right? The Sri Lankan sports minister has to sign off the men's squad.
Right.
I don't think you can get much more interfering than that. Like Imran Khan's in the background going, geez, even though I didn't do that.
So the question I want to ask you two is, how does a sport go about overthrowing its own governing body? How could that happen?
Well, they take their executives away, surely. The ICC board is made up of
the other boards.
The other boards. It's members. It's an events management company and a members club.
It's an events management company run by its own members.
Yeah. Right.
But if their own members take themselves away from it,
right. So that's not going to happen, right? Is that going to happen?
Probably not. No, but if they've got is it
what is it?
Well, like a vote. Could you have a vote of no confidence in the ICC?
So that could happen.
Then they all step back.
Yeah.
And then it's not so much overthrowing the ICC. It's changing the model the way it is, because at the minute you're right. There's no leadership. They need to try and find a window where franchise and international cricket can survive. So that's in the best interest of the member states to come together and find that. The ICC want their tournaments. So I'm sure if you get adults in the room and go like that, it comes down to leadership. And if the leadership at the top is not willing to stand up to these franchise owners, then all of a sudden you've got what you've got now. I mean, cricket's in such a dark place, I think, from an administration point of view. I'm not sure where it goes. I really worry about cricket on that front.
Well, okay. So would it be a fair statement to make that the ICC are never going to change things on their own accord?
Yeah. Unless we got some fluke where Brazil, Japan and America get really strong in cricket and there's a more of an equal footing between 5 or 6 nations.
Does that come with the Olympics?
It could, but we're still talking 20, 25
years.
years,
And
right?
and
it won't. Yeah,
So,
yeah.
so to my mind, there are two main ways that effective, radical, and long-standing change can come about. There's the players, and there's two. That country isn't necessarily in Brazil or Japan. It's Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
So they are the two ways, right? The players essentially try and wrest control back, Kerry Packer style to a degree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It won't. Yeah.
Yeah. But to do that, of course, they need the other
Yes.
thing to happen, right? They need a country or a wealth fund or just a ridiculously rich individual to come in and basically pay them to leave.
Yeah.
They are the only two ways that I can see. Is there any other ways that you can see?
I don't think the players or the Saudis are holding the cards. I think the people who are holding the cards at the moment are essentially the IPL owners. And I think it's one particular group, and that's the Ambani family. They are in partnership with the Saudis already. They have great relationships with the players. The players love playing for Mumbai and Cape Town and New York. Like, they really do. I'm not saying that as a flippant thing because they pay them a lot of money. I mean, they legitimately like the way they are looked after. Mumbai Indians used to have their own special jeans made up for the players, and you always saw the players wearing them, like even when they weren't with the team. Like, weird things like that really mattered.
I'd love to get a pair of those jeans.
I still want the white jackets of the Champions
jackets,
Trophy
yeah.
losers. Wherever those go.
In England, white jackets bring to mind the Liverpool team of
Robbie
Fowler,
1996.
Jimmy Redknapp, Stan Collingwood.
Yeah,
Neil Ruddock.
they were called the Spice Boys.
This is the most talkSPORT you've ever sounded on one of our cricket
It's true.
shows. Yeah.
It's just a cultural difference. Yeah.
So the Ambani family has just bought Cricinfo. They're now broadcasting cricket. They own a share of FanCode. They own which is the Indian streaming platform. Yeah. They own a share of Dream 11. I don't know how big these shares are. I hear varying different things.
They own 49% of the Oval Invincibles.
They own the Oval Invincibles.
And from what I hear, the ECB were very, very keen on the Ambani family being involved in the 100, and that would make sense.
I think the Ambani family were the ones who really might have pushed the ECB even to getting to that point because they were so keen to be involved. Yeah. And on top of that, as I said, through their Geo network, they have this relationship with the Saudis. They literally run their company with Saudi Arabia already. So Geo/Reliance, however you want to look at it, which is the Ambani family, is involved in cricket and is involved in Saudi Arabia. I think that's the missing link. And a lot of people are saying things like rebel leagues. There is a possibility, I don't know how big this is, but there is a possibility that the Ambanis go, why do we have to be involved with the Indian government? Why do we have to be involved with the BCCI? Why do we have to be involved with the ICC? We can just buy cricket, run our own World Cups, run the IPL, run a league in Saudi Arabia, and do that. There's all these weird little things. When that article first came out, and I know you guys would have read it really closely, one of the things was it was like $500 million. Yeah. Well, $500 million. The last Rebel League was like $4 billion, right? So that's no money. And
you made a point, because of course we have seen this play out in golf, in tennis.
That's the worry.
And in boxing, right?
That's the worry.
But in all of those sports, they've kind of gone think about things in different ways, but the same way. But as you made mention, 500 million is about 3 golfers.
Yeah.
It's not that much money, right?
It's when the Rebel League came in 2014, the one that ZTV and Lalit Modi and others were involved with, the deal that I heard was $50 million to David Warner for over, I don't know how many years that was, but $50 million up front, come and play with us in this Rebel League. Well, they can't do that with 500 million, right? So it's not a Rebel League.
No.
So that's what I think. That's the people are like, oh, it's Kerry Packer or it's the ICL, and I'm like, I don't think it is. I think it's something different, and that's why all these things are happening at the same time. So the first thing we get, Harmy, is a week and a half ago we get the leak, and Chris Barrett writes up his story. Dan Brettig has followed it up. So the Age is all over this. They've got very good contacts within the Players Union, and then a week and a half later we have the Players Union release a report that they want everyone to read about, and that report would have. If the Saudis hadn't come out a week and a half before, that report would have got about 10% the interest that it's got.
Yeah.
So my guess is that there's a leak there. So the players are on one side. The Saudis are so involved with cricket. I don't think people understand how involved with cricket they are at the moment. They had the IPL auction. They sponsor I think Aramco and the Saudi Wealth Fund Visit Saudi both fund sponsor the ICC. They've got a deal with DAZN, which means they have a deal with Cricket Australia. pretty sure for a fact they've been speaking to other cricket boards in the last 2 or 3 months as well.
By the way, DAZN have just bought Foxtel.
Yeah, so even more involved with
In Australia.
Yeah, so the Saudis are already really involved, and then you've got this other thing, as I said before. You've got these people who own all these products in cricket already, and they are, and you listen to their CEO Uday Shankar. I think he's the CEO. He's certainly involved with that whole setup. He certainly has been involved before as well, and used to run Star. And he's saying things like, "This might be the last ever ICC board," or suggesting it should be the last ever ICC board. I think if the takeover is going to come, it will be from within cricket, but with the backing of Saudi Arabia. So I don't think Saudi Arabia want to do what they did with golf, because they spent a lot of money and everyone ended up slagging them off forever, right?
And they slag each other off, which is not great for
And if they wanted to spend the money, so we know that the Saudi Wealth Fund tried to buy, was it 25% or 15% of the IPL for $5 billion and were rebuffed, right? So the BCCI obviously said, push them aside. The next way to get in that situation is through the owners. So then what you would have, my guess, is the IPL becomes, let's say, a 4 to 5 month league tournament. You have your World Cups, but run through the private league style that we currently have. And then you have some international cricket probably played between Australia, England, South Africa and India, right, at the top level. And then maybe you have tiers below that continue to play each other as feeder leagues. And maybe there's no money that goes to them and they just have to deal with it themselves. But that is... I wish I could give you more information, but these are the things that I'm being told.
There's something else as well, because, if, what's it called, Riyadh season? What is the big boxing event that they've completely revolutionised boxing?
Yeah.
Insofar that top boxers would avoid each other for years,
And now the fight.
and then they would, and then essentially that they would either fight, one would lose, and then the fight wouldn't happen. Blah blah blah. Now you've got all the best boxers. Fighting all the time
on the same
night.
bill.
Yeah. I mean, it's extraordinary. But there is something that people forget in all this. People will turn up to watch these fights in Saudi Arabia, right? So there is some murmuring about the atmosphere, because at times there's obviously no alcohol and all the rest. We know what happened within, when you go to a boxing match. The atmosphere is raucous, it's righteous. That doesn't happen in Saudi Arabia. But the spectacle of the best fighting the best every week, you can't beat that, right? So you've got that side of things.
So you're worried that people won't turn up to cricket?
No, this is the whole point, right? This is what I couldn't quite work out. So boxing works in Saudi, football works in Saudi. Some of these bigger teams get big crowds, right? Sport means that nothing if there's nobody there to watch it. We know that. Golf hasn't really worked as far as I can see, because they haven't tried to play it all in Saudi Arabia. There's still the live tour is all around the world, right? But that's still asking people to go to this other tournament where, if you're a golf fanatic and you want to see some of these golfers because you love golf and you can't see them on the PGA, you might go along, but it's a bit of a problem. And the tennis they've just bought in on, it's existing and they've just rebadged it. Cricket. So the question I was asking myself about cricket was, well, okay, let's say they throw £5 billion at it, and David Warner signs that £50 million £15 million sponsorship deal. If you play cricket in Saudi Arabia, who's going to watch it?
So there's about 4 million subcontinental people in Saudi Arabia.
Are they going to? But what?
Are they buying it to play in Saudi Arabia, or are they buying it to play?
Well,
that's
no,
the issue.
but
So
that's where what Jared is saying makes more sense. Because it's not about saying we're going to create this tournament that's going to take place in Saudi Arabia. Look at us. Well, it isn't that. No, what it is, and this is where the Ambanis will realise as well, there's no point playing this cricket outside of India.
No.
I mean, on occasion, yes.
I think what they'll do is...
you need your fans.
I think if they make the IPL the major thing, and they have whatever we want to call their version of a World Cup is, right? But let's just call it the World Cup for now. That will travel around, right? Yeah. But obviously, we know... what may not go to England, because from what I can tell, the ECB is the only board that hasn't talked to Saudi Arabia at this point. But it'll travel around a little bit. But I think what they'll do is they'll have one major IPL. The normal IPL will be in India, and then there will be something like the Champions League. I don't know what it is. I'm calling it the Saudi Slam, but I'm looking for a percentage of that if they end up using it. But there will be something that they will have for 2, 3, 4 weeks that will be a major reason for everyone to come to Saudi Arabia. They won't want to put all that money in if you don't do that. But if they're going to have their name on everything else, I don't think they care. And if you look at was it last year or the year before? Almost everything in the background just said Visit Saudi in the back of the IPL. If they can do that for all cricket that they're involved with, and it's the major cricket, that's what they want. One of the things that the Saudi government is very interested in is Indian tourists coming to Saudi Arabia, right? And if you think about it from that point of view, a one-off great tournament where the Mumbai Cape Town team is there, and I don't know, the Melbourne Stars is there, and Manchester Originals are there. There's a reason for fans around the world to come to Saudi Arabia for that week, and then you have the 3-4 million local fans, hopefully.
There's a country missing out here. What do you do? What do you do then with one of the most passionate parts of, or the passionate areas of cricket in the world? What happens to Pakistan?
This is where it goes into geopolitics, Harmy, because traditionally...
You can't just ignore them.
No,
we can't ignore them. We can't ignore them.
No, they have been.
Right.
You can, because they have been.
But
they have been.
If you're investing that much money into cricket, that is
So how about
potentially a huge market
So
to
how about
overlook.
Saudi Arabia puts on an India versus Pakistan
Which is another thing that
Test match?
I mean, we know that the Saudis have been traditionally aligned with Pakistan, and over the last couple of years, there's been a movement towards Saudis having a better relationship with India, which is why all this is happening, right? Because those things are opening up. We know that the Saudis want more Indians to come over, but also we know that there has been some sort of conversation between the Saudis and the PCB or Pakistan cricket people in general, right? If I'm spending, and I'm thinking about myself as, a prince in Saudi Arabia at the moment, I'm thinking to myself, I want to make sure that India is the one I'm catering to, but do I really want to give up on 200 million people in Pakistan who absolutely love this sport and 300 million people in Bangladesh who love this sport, right? For potentially slightly more money from England with 55 million people. So I think there actually has to be a conversation at one stage of how they do that. Right? I think that's really fascinating. So what happens if India and Saudi Arabia split, right? One way or another here. I would assume that the next logical pivot is Pakistan and Bangladesh.
But then there's something will always come. You mentioned it before about governments getting involved this and governments getting involved that. There's a huge human right element, and that is something that will that is something that while and I report on Newcastle United. The takeover was the best thing that happened to my football club, but it's there.
Yeah,
and it would be is it arguably the first time that it's come into cricket being talked about at the level. If Saudi Arabia do come in, and how does then, you've been across cricket and you're across all format of sort of facets of cricket. How does cricket deal with that if Saudi Arabia come in? Because a lot of boards. Probably the biggest sport that governments are involved with the boards.
Yeah.
And governments obviously they swear left and right over elections and everything like that. The human right element will never go away.
Look, cricket's always weird, isn't it? Because the reason we have the ICC is because it was the Imperial Cricket Conference, which was a political decision to start with. So we started with politics, right? In a way that other sports eventually got involved with it. You then have the fact that the Afghan men's team is rising up the ranks while there is a war with some of the countries involved with cricket that they have to play against, right? Like, it's not. I don't think cricket is as straightforward as even traditionally. And I know what you're saying. This is on a different level, right? It really is on a different level. But, you look at someone like Pat Cummins. Pat Cummins has gone out of his way to say he's environmentally conscious and, he wants to be involved with ethical things and everything else. And yet it's his manager, Neil Maxwell, who's massively involved with this. The players, the administrators, the media, you and I, if this comes off, all three of us are going to get offers to go over there and do something, right? We have to, everyone is going to have to make those decisions. And I don't think outside of Indian and Pakistanis specifically, that has happened as much. There's little things like 1979 when Sri Lanka boycotted playing Israel, right? But it was a warm-up for a World Cup. It didn't matter. No one, I don't think it was even covered by mainstream press when it happened. So we have had little things like that before. We had, Stuart McGill and the England team in Zimbabwe. Yeah. This is so much bigger, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
But we have seen with the golfers, with the tennis players, with the footballers, you know what it's like, man. You have a 12-year career, you have to cash in.
Absolutely.
And as you know how poorly cricket media is paid as well. Like sweeping all this up, I think if the money is right, people are going to go with it very, very quickly. And there might be some people on the outside hurling bombs in from independent places. But I do think that when it comes down to it, cricket is a, $6-8 billion sport. And that money does not trickle down to the players, to the coaches, to the media, or anything else in the way that it should. This is probably a system where that could change. And I think a lot of people are going to be like, politics be damned. Saudi Arabia has a lot of money.
Yeah.
Okay, you're listening to Following On, and very shortly we are going to be talking about Pakistan and asking the question, has it ever been any worse for a cricketing culture and team that we have for many years been saying it's reached its nadir? Well, is this the nadir? You are listening to Following On.